At 7:52 a.m., my phone vibrated against the nightstand before my alarm went off. That alone should have warned me. I rolled over, squinting through the pale gray light leaking in through the blinds. The apartment was quiet in that early morning American way. No traffic yet, no neighbors arguing. Just the low hum of the air conditioner fighting a losing battle against summer humidity. The message was from my mother. No good morning. No heart emoji. No warmth. Just text. We changed all the locks on the front door and the gate code. Please don't come by anymore. We need space. I read it once. Then again. Then a third time, slower, like maybe tone lived between the words, and I'd missed it the first 2 times. It felt less like a message from my mom and more like something HR would send after deciding you're no longer worth the severance package. Clear. Clean. Final. I sat up, the sheet sliding off my shoulder, suddenly aware of how cold the room felt. Funny how the body reacts before the mind does. My chest tightened, not in panic, more like pressure, like something heavy had been placed right where my breath usually lives. Kicked out. That was the phrase my brain landed on. Not argued with. Not misunderstood. Not temporarily unwelcome. Kicked out. And the worst part, a piece of me wasn't surprised. Love hadn't really lived in that house for years. What lived there instead were expectations, obligations, a silent understanding that my value came attached to what I could provide, not who I was. I stared at the blue glow of my phone, the words still sharp, still sterile. The morning light made everything feel clinical, like I was observing my own life from behind glass. My thumbs hovered over the screen. I could type a dozen things. What did I do? Can we talk about this? You can't be serious. Instead, I typed one word. Noted. Then I stopped myself. Deleted it. No, not yet. I didn't respond at all. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and stood up, barefoot on the hardwood floor. The apartment creaked softly, settling into the day. Somewhere outside, a delivery truck beeped as it reversed. Normal life continued, completely unaffected by the fact that I had just been erased from my own family. I made coffee out of habit, measured the grounds, filled the kettle, pressed the button. Routine is a strange thing. It shows up even when your world tilts. As the machine whirred, I leaned against the counter and let my mind drift, not to the message itself, but to everything behind it. The years that led up to this moment. The choices I'd convinced myself were temporary, reasonable, loving. I was the responsible one, the dependable one, the one who had it together. That's what they always said. For years ago, when my dad needed help for just a little while, I didn't hesitate. I'd just gotten promoted at my job in Chicago. Good salary, benefits, stability. I told myself this was what success was for, taking care of the people who took care of you. Except they hadn't really taken care of me. Not emotionally, not in the way that mattered. But I paid anyway. The mortgage, utilities, repairs, every month like clockwork. I told myself it was temporary. Temporary stretched. The coffee finished brewing. I poured a cup and carried it to the window, watching sunlight creep across the parking lot. A woman across the way was loading groceries into her trunk, talking animatedly to someone on speakerphone. She laughed. I felt oddly disconnected from her, like she belonged to a different world. One where homes didn't come with conditions. My phone buzzed again. Nothing new, just my lock screen lighting up, reminding me it existed. That's when I did it. I opened my banking app. I didn't rush. I didn't shake. My hands were steady in a way that surprised me. Almost calm. I scrolled to scheduled payments. There it was. $4,500. Automatically sent on the 15th of every month. For a house I didn't live in. For people who had just told me not to come back. I tapped it. Canceled payment. Yes. The confirmation screen popped up almost instantly. Payment canceled. A small sentence for something so massive. I stared at it longer than I needed to. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't anger. It was alignment. You don't fund a place you're not allowed to enter. The silence that followed felt strange. Not peaceful. Not loud. Just empty. Like the air after a storm siren shuts off, when your ears are still ringing but nothing's happening anymore. I set the phone face down on the counter. For the first time in years, there was nothing I needed to explain. Nothing I needed to fix. No apology forming automatically in my chest. They had changed the locks. And without realizing it, they had finally given me permission to stop trying. People like to think situations like this start with one big betrayal. They don't. They start with favors. Small ones. Reasonable ones. The kind you'd feel guilty saying no to. When my parents first asked for help, it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like responsibility. My mom framed it carefully, the way she always did when she wanted something without sounding like she was asking. Just until your dad gets back on his feet, she said. Just until the market settles. Just until things stabilize. Just was her favorite word. At the time, I believed her. I was 27, newly promoted, proud of myself in a way I didn't yet know how to enjoy. I thought being needed was proof that I mattered, that I was finally doing adulthood right. The first payment went through without a second thought. The second one felt like help. By the sixth, it felt like expectation. Somewhere along the way, it became normal. Normal to cover the mortgage when my dad's hours got cut again. Normal to pay the electric bill because they'll shut it off if we're late. Normal to send extra money when something unexpected came up. Unexpected happened a lot. A leaking pipe, a broken fence, a car repair that couldn't wait. Every call followed the same rhythm. Concern first, panic second, gratitude last like an afterthought. You're such a blessing, my mom would say. We don't know what we'd do without you. Those words used to warm me. I held on to them like proof that this was love. But gratitude never turned into relief. Relief never turned into independence. It just kept turning into more. I didn't live in their house anymore, but somehow I was still responsible for it. I paid for internet I didn't use so my dad could watch football on Sundays. I paid for lawn care once, then again, because it's cheaper if you just handle it. I even covered property taxes one year because my mom said the letter made her dizzy. Dizzy. I remember sitting on my couch after that transfer went through, staring at my bank balance and laughing softly to myself. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. I was managing a home I didn't belong to. Still, I told myself it was temporary. I told myself families help each other. What I didn't notice at first was how invisible I'd become. I wasn't included in decisions, only payments. When they replaced the dishwasher, I found out after the fact. When they repainted the living room, my mom mentioned it casually, like it had nothing to do with me, even though my money had bought the paint. I was present in the math, not the memories. The shift was subtle. That's how these things survive for so long. My sister, Emily, played her part without even trying. She lived closer to them, visited often, brought the grandkids by. She had presence. I had payroll. Whenever she needed something, it was an emergency. When I needed anything, space, time, acknowledgement, it was inconvenient. Don't be dramatic, my mom would say if I sounded tired. You know your sister has it harder. Harder became the excuse for everything. I learned not to ask questions, not because I agreed, but because questioning disrupted the peace. And peace in our family was code for silence. The first time I felt something crack was over something small. I'd driven home for Thanksgiving the same way I did every year. Same guest room. Same towel folded on the bed like I was staying at a hotel. During dinner, my dad mentioned they were thinking about updating the house. New kitchen. Maybe new floors. I smiled, nodded, chewed my food. Sounds nice, I said. No one asked what I thought. No one asked how it would be paid for. They didn't have to. Later that night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan, listening to it click softly with each rotation. That was the first time I wondered if I was funding a future that didn't include me. I brushed the thought away. Family doesn't work like that, I told myself. But families do work like that. All the time. They take what you offer until it becomes what you owe. The truth is, I made it easy. I never said no. I never asked for boundaries. I never demanded recognition. I thought love meant endurance. I thought loyalty meant silence. And so, month after month, the transfers continued. Automatic, invisible, efficient, until the morning my phone lit up with a message that made one thing painfully clear. I wasn't helping a home. I was funding a place I was never meant to belong to. And suddenly every "just for now" echoed back to me, heavy and hollow, because temporary had finally reached its expiration date. The first real betrayal didn't arrive with shouting or slammed doors. It arrived quietly, disguised as a celebration. I was sitting in my car outside a Target parking lot, engine off, scrolling through my phone while waiting for curbside pickup. It was one of those in-between moments where your mind isn't anywhere important, just drifting. I wasn't looking for anything in particular when the post appeared. A photo. My parents stood on the front porch of the house I paid for, smiling wide into the camera. My sister Emily was there too, her arm looped confidently through my mother's, like she belonged exactly where she was standing. The caption stopped me cold. So proud of our girl for stepping up and securing our future. This house is finally in the right hands. Right hands. I read it again. Then again. There was no mention of me. No tag. No acknowledgement. Just comments flooding in. Friends, cousins, distant relatives I barely remembered. You raised her right. Such a blessing to have a daughter like Emily. Family is everything. My stomach dropped in a slow, nauseating way. I could hear my own breathing over the low hum of the car. Somewhere nearby, a shopping cart rattled as someone pushed it past my window, completely unaware that my world had just tilted. I wasn't angry yet. I was confused, because if I wasn't part of this story, then what exactly had I been paying for? I closed the app, but the image burned itself into my mind. That house, that porch, the one I'd helped repaint 2 summers ago because my dad said, "Why hire someone when you're already here?" I sat there longer than I should have, my phone resting face down in my lap, like it might betray me again if I looked at it. That night, I did something I hadn't done before. I called the bank, not to accuse, not to threaten, just to understand. The woman on the line had a voice too cheerful for what she was telling me. "Yes, ma'am," she said, tapping away on her keyboard. "Your name is still the primary on the mortgage, but I do see a recent request to update contact information." My chest tightened. "Updated to who?" I asked. "An Emily Carter," she replied. "Looks like the paperwork was submitted last week. It's still pending verification." Pending, meaning someone had tried. Someone had assumed they could. I thanked her and hung up, my hand trembling now despite my best efforts to stay calm. I paced my apartment, bare feet tracing the same worn path across the floor. My thoughts raced ahead of me, assembling possibilities I didn't want to face. They were planning something, and I wasn't included. 2 days later, I noticed the next crack. It was financial this time. I logged into my checking account out of habit, expecting nothing more than the usual balance check. Instead, my eyes locked onto a charge that didn't belong. $2,300, transfer complete. The destination account was familiar in the worst way. My sister's old credit card. The one I'd helped her pay off years ago during what she'd promised was a one-time emergency. My hands went cold. I texted her immediately. "Did you use my account?" The response came fast. "Relax. I needed it for the kids." I thought we were still sharing that. Sharing. The word felt like a slap. "We weren't," I typed back. "You didn't ask." The typing bubbles appeared, disappeared, then nothing. My phone buzzed again. Not her. My mother. "Honey, Emily told me what happened. Let's not turn this into a big thing. She'll pay you back. A big thing. I stared at the message until the letters blurred. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about permission. About how easily they crossed a line because they didn't believe it was there. That night, the family group chat changed its name. Family Circle. Soft. Inclusive. Harmless. Inside, someone had posted a meme, a cartoon of a person handing over their wallet with the caption, "When you're the family sponsor." I felt heat rise in my chest as notifications stacked up. Someone tagged me with a laughing emoji. Another added, "Guess we know who to call when rent's due." My dad chimed in with, "Only fair if we name a room after her." Laughter flooded the chat. No one stopped it. No one said my name with respect. I left the chat. They added me back. I left again. Then I blocked everyone. The silence that followed wasn't relief. It was exposure, like stepping out of a noisy room and realizing how much damage the noise had been doing. A week later, I drove by the house without planning to. Muscle memory took over. As I slowed at the corner, I saw something that made my chest ache in a new way. A new keypad on the gate. Shiny. Updated. I didn't stop the car. I didn't get out. I didn't need to. Because somewhere between the Facebook post, the bank call, the stolen money, and the laughter in that group chat, something had shifted. I wasn't family. I was optional. And the text message that would eventually lock me out hadn't been the beginning. It was just the first time they said it out loud. There's a strange moment that happens right before something breaks. Not the loud snap everyone imagines, but a quiet click, like a lock turning. For me, it happened on a Saturday afternoon I hadn't planned to remember. I was back in my hometown for the weekend, staying at a cheap hotel off the highway instead of the house. I told myself it was to give everyone space, but the truth was simpler. I didn't feel welcome anymore, and I didn't want to pretend otherwise. I still came by that afternoon to drop off mail that had been forwarded to my address by mistake. A harmless excuse. Something neutral. The gate was open. I parked across the street instead of the driveway, habitually minimizing my presence the way I always had. The lawn was freshly cut, neater than I remembered. Someone had time for that now. As I walked up the side of the house, I heard voices drifting from the open kitchen window. I stopped without meaning to. My mother's voice came first, low, casual, relaxed in a way it never was around me anymore. "She's been quiet," she said. "Too quiet." My sister laughed softly. "That's because she knows. She always knows before anyone says it." "Good," my mom replied. "I don't want a scene." I felt my pulse in my ears. A pause. Then my sister again. "Once everything's finalized, it won't matter anyway. She can't undo it." My breath caught. Undo what? My mother sighed, the sound full of something that almost resembled relief. She put the mortgage in her name. That was her choice. We never forced her. My fingers curled around the envelope in my hand. "That's what I keep telling everyone," my sister said. "She likes being needed. This just formalizes things." Formalizes. There was a clink of glass on counter. "Ice, maybe." "And if she gets upset?" my sister asked. My mom didn't hesitate. "She'll get over it. She always does." Then the sentence that settled into my chest like something sharp and permanent. "She's not really part of the household anymore," my mother said. "She's more like support. Financial support. Support. Not daughter. Not family. An asset." I stood there frozen, the afternoon sun warm on my back, while something inside me went completely cold. I didn't cry. I didn't gasp. I didn't even feel angry. I felt clear. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't poor communication. It wasn't temporary stress. It was a system, and I had finally seen its blueprint. I stepped away quietly, the way you do when you realize you've walked into a room where the truth is already being spoken, and it isn't meant for you to hear. I didn't leave the envelope. I didn't knock. I got in my car and drove. The road stretched ahead of me, long and familiar, but something had changed. The memories that used to tug at me, holidays, birthdays, childhood rituals, felt distant, like photographs from someone else's life. By the time I reached my hotel, the sun was setting, painting the sky in muted oranges and pinks. I sat in the car for a long time, engine off, hands resting in my lap. I replayed the conversation in my head, not to torture myself, but to understand it fully. They weren't angry at me. They were done needing to pretend I mattered beyond what I provided. That night, I didn't call anyone. I didn't text. I didn't journal or cry into a pillow. I opened my laptop. I started a list. Dates, amounts, descriptions, mortgage payments, utilities, repairs, transfers I'd forgotten about until I saw them again in black and white. Seeing it laid out like that was grounding. Numbers don't soften things. They don't justify or excuse. They just exist. And they told a story far more honest than my family ever had. I realized something then that surprised me. The pain wasn't fresh anymore. It had already happened. Slowly. Over years. What I felt now wasn't heartbreak. It was detachment. The kind that comes when your body understands something before your heart catches up. The lock hadn't changed yet. The text hadn't arrived yet. But the boundary had already formed. And once a boundary exists, all that's left is for reality to catch up to it. The text came on a Tuesday morning. No greeting. No explanation. Just a notification that changed the temperature of the room. Mom, we changed all the locks on the front door and also the gate. It's better this way. Please don't come by unannounced. I stared at the screen, waiting for the rest of it. There was nothing else. No apology. No acknowledgement of what that meant. No recognition of how impossible that sentence would have sounded to me a year ago. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I felt something sharper than anger and steadier than grief. Confirmation. I set my phone down on the kitchen counter and made coffee. The normality of the motion almost made me laugh. Scoop. Pour. Press the button. Steam filled the quiet apartment while my life officially split into before and after. I read the message again once the mug was in my hand. We changed all the locks. Not we talked. Not we needed space. Not we made a mistake. Just action. Final. I sat at the small table by the window and let the realization settle fully this time. They hadn't locked me out in the heat of an argument. They'd planned it. I checked my email. There it was. A notification from the bank. Time-stamped 40 minutes earlier. Contact information, update approved. Emily's email address, now, sat where mine used to be. I exhaled slowly. They thought the order mattered. They thought locking the door came before consequences. I picked up my phone and opened my notes app, the list I'd started days ago. I added one final line at the top. Unauthorized denial of access to property. Then I made 3 calls. The first was to the bank. The second was to a property attorney recommended by a coworker who owed me a favor. The third was to a locksmith. By noon, the fog they'd expected me to drown in had turned into something precise and navigable. The attorney didn't sound surprised when I explained. No one can legally lock out the primary mortgage holder, she said. Not family. Not parents. Not siblings. I stared out the window at the city moving on without me. What if they already did? I asked. Then they've created a problem for themselves, she replied calmly. And a paper trail. The locksmith was even more straightforward. If it's in your name, he said, you can change them back. I thanked him and hung up. I didn't go to the house that day. I let them sit in their certainty for one full night. The next morning, my phone buzzed with missed calls. Mom. Dad. Emily. Voicemails stacked on top of each other like waves. I listened to none of them. Instead, I drove to the house with a folder on the passenger seat and a quiet resolve in my chest. The gate was locked, just like the text said. I didn't touch it. I parked on the street and waited. 10 minutes later, the locksmith arrived. 15 after that, the police officer did too. Not because I'd called them, but because my sister had. She stood on the porch when I walked up, arms crossed, face tight with indignation rather than fear. You can't do this, she snapped. This is our home. The officer looked between us. I handed him the paperwork without a word. Mortgage statement, property records, my ID. He read quietly, then nodded. She's the legal holder, he said to Emily. You can't deny her access. My mother appeared behind her, eyes wide. This is unnecessary, she said, her voice trembling just enough to suggest she wanted sympathy. We just needed boundaries. I met her gaze for the first time in days. Boundaries don't involve stealing access to something you don't own, I said evenly. The locksmith waited for my signal. I gave it. Metal clicked. Locks turned. The sound was clean and final. Emily's face flushed. You're really doing this? She demanded. After everything we did for you? I almost smiled. For me? I repeated softly. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't list sacrifices or remind them of years they'd already erased. I said only this. I'm not kicking you out today, but I'm taking my name and my access back. Silence fell heavy on the porch. The officer cleared his throat. Looks like everything's in order, he said. I suggest you all figure this out civilly. He left. The locksmith left. I stood there with my family. No, the people who used to be my family, and felt nothing but distance. I'll be in touch through my attorney, I said, turning toward the door. Please don't come by unannounced. I used my key. Inside, the house smelled the same, but it no longer felt like home. And for the first time, that didn't hurt. I didn't stay in the house long after that day. Not because I was afraid, not because I was weak, but because I finally understood something that had taken me years to learn. Ownership doesn't make a place home. Belonging does. And I no longer belonged there. The attorney handled the rest. Formal notices, deadlines, clear language that left no room for emotional reinterpretation. My parents stopped calling after the second letter. Emily tried once more. An email this time, long, rambling, half apology and half accusation. I didn't reply. Silence was the only response that didn't cost me anything. I arranged for the house to be sold, not out of spite, not to punish anyone, but because I didn't want another memory anchored to walls that had learned to shut me out. When the for sale sign went up, I wasn't there to see it. I didn't need to be. I moved forward quietly, found a new apartment in a neighborhood where no one knew my family name, where the mail that arrived was addressed only to me. I bought a couch that I chose for comfort, not approval. Hung art I liked without explaining why. For the first few weeks, I kept waiting for the guilt. It never came. What had come, unexpected and steady, was peace. I slept through the night for the first time in years. 8 meals without bracing for the next request, the next emergency that somehow always landed at my feet. My phone felt lighter in my hand without the constant hum of obligation. I realized how much energy I'd been spending just managing everyone else's expectations. Without that weight, I felt taller, calmer, real. One afternoon, months later, I scrolled past a photo online. The house again. Different angle, different caption, end of an era. I didn't stop scrolling, because the era they were mourning had ended long before the locks changed. The message, the one that kicked me out, hadn't been the cruelest thing they'd done. It had been the clearest. It told me exactly where I stood without pretending otherwise. And in a strange way, I was grateful for that. Clarity is a gift, even when it comes wrapped in pain. Especially then. I don't tell the story because I want sympathy. I tell it because somewhere, someone is reading this who still thinks love means access, who believes that being needed is the same as being valued, who is standing outside a door, literal or emotional, waiting for it to open again. Sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes that's the beginning. The locks they changed didn't trap me outside. They freed me from a role I'd outgrown. I learned that boundaries don't have to be loud, that walking away doesn't mean you lost. That family isn't defined by who has your keys, but by who respects your right to lock your own door. The text message didn't end my life. It returned it to me. And that's something no one can ever take away.